Okay, in this unit, we're going to be going over real estate taxes and liens. Unit 7 in the book, if you're on the 14th edition of the Modern Pennsylvania Real Estate Practice in Pennsylvania. So the learning objections. One is to identify the various classifications of liens. Describe how real estate taxes are applied through assessments, through tax liens, and to use the use of equalization ratios. Ooh, there's going to be some math in this one. Okay, shake your heads, that's okay. And we're going to explain how non-tax liens such as mechanics liens, mortgage liens, judgment liens are applied and enforced. Okay. Christine, you're giving me that look.
What?
I don't know, like you're nervous.
Oh, no. Good.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. What's that?
I don't like this chapter already.
Okay, you know, like I don't like it neither. You know what? I am good at math, but I'm not an expert in this. But Yins will have a treat on February 17th, I think it's a Thursday, because we're going to have Dave Wilhelm is going to teach class. He may teach the whole day. He may only teach half of it, but I'm going to have Dave focus a lot on math because he's good with the math. I'm not that good with it, being honest with you. Ownership of real estate is subject to obligations imposed by government powers, taxes, imposed by creditors in courts to secure payment for debt. So a lien is a charge or a claim against a property as security. I would know that definition. Typically, it's monetary. Okay. Creating liens. Remember this, V-I-S-E, vice. So when you create a lien on a property, number one is it has to be voluntary. Okay. So if I want to get a mortgage on a piece of property, if I want to give a mortgage on a piece of property, because when you give a mortgage, the mortgagor is the borrower, the mortgagee is the lender. So that's a little bit tricky with the ORE rule, okay? Because typically when you say you're going to give something, doesn't the leaseor, who's the leaseor, the tenant or landlord? Landlord, because he's giving the leasee right to use the property, right? Who's the trustor versus the trustee? The trustor is giving the property to the trustee to it. And then the trustee is going to manage it for who? The beneficiary. So in this case, okay, creating a lien, remember vice, it has to be voluntary. So if I'm going to go and I want to buy this golf course, I'm going to go get a mortgage, and it's a voluntary act, right? You can also create a lien involuntary. That's created by law. And then there's statutory. It's created by a statute, or equitable, created by common law. Okay? So let's talk about some examples of a voluntary lien. It would be a mortgage. Okay? An involuntary lien, if you have a piece of property and you're not paying your property taxes, they can put a real estate lien against your property. Ain't that involuntary? Yes. And a court order judgment would be an involuntary lien. A court order judgment. Anybody give me an example of a court order judgment?
Restitution?
Yeah, it can be restitution for something. The court says, hey, Lauren, you have to pay this amount. And if you didn't get the money to pay it, we're going to put a lien against your property until you get it paid off. Okay? Now there's general liens, and then there's specific liens. So a general lien would affect all the properties, both real property and personal property would be a general lien. Okay? It could be for judgments, estate inheritance taxes, could be a general lien. Not only could it affect the property, but it can affect the personal property inside and your personal property. If, debts to the IRS would be a general lien. If you owe the IRS money, they're going to put a general lien not only on your house, but on your bank account, on your car, on your jet ski, on your boat, on your stereo in your house. They're going to put a general lien on everything. Okay? A specific lien is secured by a specific property. So, specific liens are secured by a specific parcel of real estate and only affect that particular property. Specific liens on real estate include vendor liens, mechanic liens, mortgage liens, real estate tax liens, and liens for special assessments and utilities. Okay? A vendor's lien is a lien belonging to a vendor or seller of the property for the unpaid purchase price of the property, where the vendor or the seller has not taken any other liens of security, such as a mortgage, beyond a personal obligation to the purchaser. Vendor liens in real estate are uncommon and arise out of the use of owner financing. So, Azaria, I'm going to sell you a piece of property. Okay? And you come to me and say, Tom, and I say to you, Azaria, instead of you going to the bank and getting the money, I own the property free and clear. How about if I finance it for you? I would be the vendor, because I think, and you would be the vendee. We got to look at term up now, because if mortgage or is the person giving the loan to the bank, and the bank is the mortgagee, look up in the back of the book. Tell me what the vendor and the vendee is, because I could be wrong on it. Vendor and vendee.
There's no vendee.
Okay, is there a vendor?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, there's a vendor's lien.
Okay.
A lien that belongs to a vendor for the unpaid purchase of the price of the land.
Okay, so the vendor is the seller then of the property. So you need to know that. The vendor is the seller. Okay. Mechanics lien. Oh, special assessment. Where would a special assessment lien come into play? We talked about this at the condos, right? Remember we said that a condo association could have a special assessment if they had to do major improvements like putting roofs on, putting a swimming pool in, or something like that. You guys are in trouble. Real estate tax liens would be for a specific property. So a general lien covers everything, both personal and personal property, real and personal property. And there's usually judgments, estate and inheritance tax, IRS, that covers everything. The general. Isn't there a general in the government, in the Army? Right, Jace? Yeah. So that's how you're going to remember a general lien. Isn't the Army ran by the government? And a general lien would cover everything. A specific lien is for a specific property. So if Vaughnie owns 5 properties and each one has its own separate mortgage on it, and she gets a mortgage on the property here at, let's say, 123 Happy Hollow, that is a specific lien because it's just tied to that specific property. So if she defaults on that, they're not going to take the other 4 properties, right? They're only going to take the property that she had the mortgage on, a specific lien. Okay. Vendor's lien, we know that's with owner financing. What's the mechanic's lien? Does anybody know what a mechanic's lien is? Squirrel? Is it for when a mechanic works on your car?
I don't think so.
Look it up in the back of the book. Mechanic's lien.
With a big one like that in the office.
What's that?
With a big one like that in the office.
What?
Mechanics.
Mechanic's lien.
Isn't that like always a lien against something?
No.
I hear Luke saying that all the time.
What's that?
Lien.
A lien. Liens can be all kind of different. General, specific, for IRS, for inheritance tax, for judgments. Specific lien could be for real estate taxes, special assessments, and a mechanic's lien. But you guys need to know what a mechanic's lien is, guys. Don't worry about it. Zarga? You wasn't putting your hand up? No. Okay. See that glare? You're right there, glare because of that door. Look behind you. See that door? See how that door glares? So I can't tell. Okay, who found the answer in the back of the book? Come on, Sheila, help me out.
Oh, I knew what it was, I'm sorry. And you want me to read it to you?
Well, just give me a definition if you have to read it.
For the mechanical lien,
Yes.
a statutory lien created in favor of contractors, laborers, and material men who have performed work or furnished materials in erection or repair of a building.
Okay. So I'm building a new home. And I have a contractor who comes in and puts the roof on, a roofer. And I don't pay him. He can put a mechanic's lien against the property. So when you're building a house, a lot of people, they're the general contractor, and they got all kind of people working on it, right? They could have a plumber, the guy that comes in and does the plumbing. And if you don't pay him, he can file a mechanic's lien against the property. The bricklayer, the flooring guy, the landscaper, anybody that works on that property, if you don't pay him, they can file a mechanic's lien against the property. So how do effects of liens on title? They may reduce the property value because a lien runs with the property. So if you're buying a property and there's a lien on it and they can't satisfy it, it will reduce what that property would sell for in the open market because you have to pay the lien off. Okay? It runs with the land. So once you put a lien on a piece of property, okay, it would run with the land until it's taken care of. So if I had a property and I had a lien on it, could I sell that property to Lauren? Yes. But guess what? If I don't pay that lien off at closing, that lien will go then on the property and would be part of your responsibility if you want to sell it. Okay? So that's why buyers should have a title search.
You said it goes to her then?
Yeah, so if I have a piece of property that has a mechanic's lien, let's say I built a brand new house and Garrett put the roof on and I didn't pay him. I said I wasn't happy with the job he did. And he put a mechanic's lien on that house. And I wanted to sell that house to you, Lex. I could sell that house to you without paying that lien off. But guess what? Now the house you had would have a lien on it.
But I might not want to buy it because it has a lien on it.
You probably wouldn't, and that's why I would recommend that you have a title search, because that's what a title search does.
So
It
you might
goes
not
and
even
checks all
know
the.
until after you get the house.
You do a title search before you close. So typically, the way it works is somebody makes an offer on a house. The buyer and seller come to an agreement, and then that buyer goes to a title company or an attorney, and they go to the courthouse before the closing, because there's a time period from the time you make an offer till the time you close and get the house, right? You got to get the paperwork in order. If there's a mortgage, you got to get a mortgage. You got to get the title search done. So then the title search will determine if there's any liens. So if there's a title search shows that there's a lien, does that stop you, Lex, from buying a house? No, you can still buy it with that lien. Maybe it's a great deal. And you say, I don't care. The house was worth $500,000. I got it for $100,000. The lien's for $50,000. I'll take it with that lien. So you can convey property with a lien on it, but you should be advising all your buyers to get a title search so that they know that before a final settlement. And then if there's a lien on it, typically what happens 99% of the time, they find it in the title search and the seller has to pay that lien off at closing, or the buyer says, I ain't buying the property. That's how it works most of the time.
Oh, so the seller has to pay that.
Yeah, the seller would have to pay it off.
You just.
Yeah, in our sales agreements, we have that the seller must convey free and clear title. And if he doesn't, the buyer doesn't have to buy the property, and the seller could be responsible for any costs that the buyer has occurred with home inspections, appraisals, mortgages, and so forth. So the buyer should always have a title search. Very rarely.
So what if I bought it with a lien and I just never paid it either, and I just sold it, just keep paying down the line?
Holy schmolies. What would happen? Well, Jared could go to court and make you pay it. And if you didn't pay it, take the property off you. That's what would happen. So the lien holder can go to court. So let's say the lien was a mortgage through Charlotte Federal Bank. And I sold you the property and didn't pay the lien off. And you said you don't care. Charlotte Federal could foreclose on that property and say either pay the lien, Lex, or we're taking the property off you. And the sheriff then would put the property up for sale and get the money and pay Charlotte Federal Bank. Yeah, because you don't want a property that has a lien against it. That would be, we call that a cloud on the title. So let's talk about priority of liens. Okay, because do you think some properties have more than one lien against them? Yes, absolutely. Sometimes they have more than one lien. So the first to record is the first to get paid. Most cases. There's an exception to the rule. So the first to get record is the first to get paid. Real estate taxes and special assessments generally take priority regardless of the order. So Jared put that roof on and the guy didn't pay, and then the guy went to the bank, and got a mortgage, so he had a first mortgage. And that was the first thing to get recorded in the courthouse. Because Jared didn't run up and record his lien. Okay? Then Jared went to the courthouse and filed a lien against the property. So, but this was the first one to record. So the second one was the mechanic's lien. And then the guy didn't pay his taxes. Then there was a tax lien. Okay? The tax lien typically supersedes everybody. So let's say there's 3 liens against the property here. First mortgage, it was the first to record. The mechanics lien was the second to record, and the tax lien was the third to record. So, and let's say that this property was sold, they foreclosed on it, sold it for $100,000. Well, the tax lien is the first lien that gets paid, even though it was the last one to get recorded. It may not have been recorded at all. The second one to get paid, you would assume it would be the first mortgage, right? No, mechanics liens trump first mortgages. So the mechanics lien would have priority over a first mortgage. So if all the taxes were paid, the guy built a new home, went and got a mortgage, and one of the contractors put a mechanics lien against it, even though the mortgage was recorded first, the mechanics lien is paid. Okay? Now you can have subordinate agreements. They're written agreements between lien holders to change the priority of the lien. Okay? So for example, you have a first mortgage, right? Against the property. It's recorded first. That's why they call it first mortgage. Then the guy goes and gets a home equity loan and gets a second mortgage. Did you ever hear of that? Okay. Well, they can have an agreement with the first mortgage holder that this guy, even though the first mortgage was recorded first, jumps ahead if there's a default, gets paid first. So they call that a subordinate agreement. Know that term, highlighted or something. They may change the priority, Christine. So here's a diagram on page 109. You got liens. It could either be a specific lien or a general lien. A general lien, we know, covers what? Everything. It could be personal property and real estate. And it could be for involuntary, a lot of times it's involuntary lien, and it could be for taxes, and it could be either equitable or statutory. Now, if you go down the other side of the chart, you could have a specific lien that could be for a mortgage, a voluntary mortgage. Lauren goes to the bank, gets a mortgage, that's a voluntary lien. Or it could be an involuntary lien for taxes. And then that would be either equitable judgment or statutory law. Okay? So equitable and statutory. Let's look at page 108 and look at the difference. You may want to know this terminology, Vaughn. A statute at the bottom of page 108, squirrel. A statutory lien is created by statute. A real estate tax lien, for example, where it's created by statute. Okay? Equitable lien arises out of common law, maybe a court order judgment. So a statutory lien is out of statute. For example, real estate taxes. An equitable lien arises out of common law, a court order judgment that requires the debtor to pay the balance on a delinquent charge. Would be an involuntary, right? Equitable lien. Real estate tax liens. General. The ownership of real estate is subject to certain government powers. See Unit 5. One of these is the right of state and local governments to impose levies or taxes to pay for their functions. Because the location of the real estate is primarily fixed, the government can levy taxes with a high degree of certainty that the taxes will be collected. The annual taxes levied on real estate usually has priority over previous recorded liens, so they may be enforced by a court order sale. There are two types of real estate taxes: general real estate taxes, also called ad valorem taxes, and special assessment or improvement taxes. Both are levied against specific parcels of property and automatically become liens on the property. So we talked about special assessments on a condo, right? What would be an example, Azaria, of a special assessment on a condo? What can a condo association impose a special assessment against the owners for? Give me an example. Condos. Give me a reason why Sutu may get a special assessment on her condo.
I'm just making an assumption of what assessment.
Maybe they're putting a roof on, and the condo association fees aren't enough to cover it. So the condo association could put a special assessment against her unit, and she would have to pay that. And if she don't pay it, it would become a lien.
What's an assessment again?
What's that, honey?
What's an assessment again?
Special assessment.
What is an assessment?
Assessment is a charge against a particular property. Okay, so let's say the condo association needs to put all new roofs on. They could have a special assessment for the roofs, and everybody would have to buck up to pay for it. So Tammy, let's say you lived in Bell Vernon, and this just happened in Bell Vernon about 10 years ago, and there's no community sewage. The county or the local municipality, Lex, can come in to Bell Vernon and put sewer lines in. And then whatever the cost for that is, they could do a special assessment for each individual house for their share of the sewer lines. Okay, and that happens. That happens. Equalization is a rate for figuring out taxes. So if you go to page 111, down at the bottom. Well, let's talk about the exemptions first from taxes. Does every building have to pay taxes? No. There's some exemptions. Give me an example of an exemption of a building that wouldn't have to pay taxes. You're saying UPMC. Most city, state, and federal government buildings are exempt from paying taxes. Churches, Lex, are exempt from paying taxes. So they don't have to pay real estate taxes. Okay. Schools, parks, what's that? So maybe Salvation Army. Schools, parks, and playgrounds. Religious and charitable institutions. That's where the Salvation Army comes into. Hospitals, the schools, they don't have to pay tax, real estate tax. So know that there are exceptions to paying tax, and that not everybody has to pay them. Not everybody has to pay them. Assessment. Real estate is valued for tax purposes by county and township assessors or appraisers. So let's say each one of these tables are a different piece of real estate. And let's say how many people sitting at the table is the size. So if there's 2 people sitting at the table, it's maybe a 2-bedroom home, 1,500 square feet. If there's 1 person sitting at the table, maybe it's a 1-bedroom home, only 1,000 square feet. So the county comes in, and if there's 3 people sitting at the table, like we had in the back, it's a 3-bedroom home, it's a bigger home. So the county is going to come in. Now, is it fair for that 3-bedroom home back here to pay the same taxes as a 1-bedroom smaller home? Bigger property, worth more, right? So the county sends in assessors and appraisers, Lex, and they go through they go look at all the properties, and they put an assessment on it, a value. And then the county uses that value to determine how much tax each individual property would pay. Okay? Then they use an equalization rate, and that's down at the bottom of page 111. In some jurisdictions, when it's necessary to correct general inequalities in statewide tax assessments, an equalization factor is used to achieve uniformity. An equalization factor may be applied to raise or lower assessments in a particular district or county. The assessment value of each property in that area is multiplied by the equalization factor, and the tax rate is then applied to the equalization assessment. Would you agree that in Westmoreland County, some areas have nicer homes than other areas? So they may apply equalization factor to those areas to adjust the value up so that it's fair. Okay. Tax rates and billing. So for the process of arriving at the real estate tax rate, because we pay taxes on our house, Lex, we get a tax bill twice a year. Begins the adoption of a budget. So Ross River Township puts a budget together by each taxing district. Each budget covers the financial requirements of the taxing body. So for example, Ross River Township puts a budget together. And then the fiscal year may be from January through December. That's a calendar year. Or sometimes it's a fiscal year period from July 1 to June 30th. The budget must include an estimate of all expenditures for that year. The next step is to appropriate. Appropriation is a way the tax body authorizes the expenditures of funds and provides a source of funding. Appropriation generally involves the adoption of an ordinance or the passage of laws that states the specific terms of the proposed taxation. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, let's say this property is worth $50,000. This property is worth $100,000. This property is worth $200,000. This property is worth $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. They're all in Ross River Township. Ross River will look at how much it costs to run the township. And then they look at how many homes there are in there and the values, and everybody's taxed accordingly. So the $100,000 guy doesn't pay as much as the $600,000 guy. Does that make sense? So the more your property is worth, the more of that tax bill you would pay. And then they send a tax bill. Now enforcement, if you don't pay your taxes, Lex, the county will come and take your property and sell it for taxes. So you could have a $600,000 house and owe a $20,000 tax bill and not have any other mortgages on it. And if you don't pay those taxes, they'll come and take your property and sell it as a tax sale. And whoever buys it only has to pay the taxes off. Now, typically with a tax sale, if there's any other liens, they would have to pay those off too. But sometimes people lose a nice house that's worth a lot of money only because they didn't pay their taxes. And some people make a good living. I have clients and friends that make a good living. That's all they do. They buy tax sale properties. I talked to you and Luke about this years ago. I said, why don't we go into business of buying tax sale properties? There's a little bit of work involved. You got to go to the courthouse, see who owes taxes. Then you have to go look at a map, find out where the property's at. Then you have to go buy the property, take a look at it, see what you think it's worth. Then you have to do a title search on that property to see if there's any other mortgages and liens on it. Sometimes you can get a tax sale absolute. So there's a little bit of work in that. The owner has the right of redemption. So even when they sell your property for taxes, you have a certain period of time, Ellen, to still come up with the money and stop the tax sale. You have a period of time to be able to do that, even after the tax sale. So you have to know that they have a right of redemption. Special assessments and local improvements, we talked about that. Other liens on real property, mortgage liens, we talked about that. Mechanics liens, judgment liens. These are all different types of liens against real estate. Commercial real estate broker lien. Maybe the guy owes the real estate broker a fee. He could put a commercial real estate broker lien on it. Domestic support. You don't pay your support. They could put a lien against the property. Inheritance tax. Somebody died and didn't pay their inheritance tax. IRS liens. A lot of different ways for them to attach your property, huh, Christine? Liens for municipal utilities. Remember we talked about the sewer lines going through. A bail bonds lien. Maybe, Vaughn, you post bail because you get picked up for beating up somebody and you don't pay it and you don't show up for court. They could put a bail bonds lien against you. IRS tax liens. And let's see, here's a video. Quarter after 3, man. We're almost there. Sorry, guys. We're just struggling with bad internet.
A lien is a right to keep possession of property belonging to another person until a debt owed by that person is discharged. When you think of a lien, think of money. Just keep saying to yourself, lien money, lien money, lien money, until whenever you see the word lien, the dollar sign pops into your head. Remember, all liens are attached to the property, not to the owner. So when you take on a new property, you want to make sure to have the appropriate liens removed before transferring title. Let's discuss liens a bit further. Liens can be classified as general or specific, voluntary, involuntary, statutory, or equitable. A general lien is a lien on property, both real and personal, of the debtor. Example would be judgment liens, corporation or franchise tax liens, inheritance tax, income tax, debts of a deceased person, and so on. A specific lien is against one property. Examples would be a trust deed or mortgage, property tax assessments, or a mechanics lien. A voluntary lien would be a lien that was placed on the property with the consent of the owner. Now you may be thinking, why would I want to do that to myself? Well, remember, when you take out a loan to obtain a property, you voluntarily created a debt. Thus, you have created a voluntary lien. So mortgages and trust deeds are prime examples of voluntary liens. An involuntary lien, however, is a little bit different. An involuntary lien is placed on the property without the consent of the owner. An example would be a judgment lien or mechanics lien. A judgment is a court's final decision on the right of the obligator to pay the parties involved. Once the judgment lien has been filed, it creates a general lien against all the property of the defendant. The mechanics lien is filed for the non-payment of labor of materials that were used to improve the property. Mechanics liens can be a bummer because it can impair your ability to get a loan on the property. Because mechanics liens take priority, so if the money comes back, the mechanics lien will be paid off before the lender could be paid back in the event of foreclosure. A statutory lien is placed on the property by law. Examples would be real estate property taxes and special assessments. An equitable lien is placed on the property by written contract or by what is fair and equitable.
Get business insurance in 10 minutes or less with
We're
Net.
getting through it,
Because there's
man.
no
We're
time
getting
to
through
waste
the
when
day
you're
here,
ready to start
guys.
business. General
Take a
liability,
5-minute
workers'
break.
comp. Commercial property with just a few clicks, so you can get back to work. Go to nextinsurance.com and see your quote in 10 minutes or less.
Well, did we ever bring the other buzzards up?
There's some batteries.
What's that?
I didn't put the batteries on.
Can you go ahead and do that for me? How you making out with the meeting here?
That's all good, whatever I have.
Can you send it to me?
Maybe.
My eyes are getting heavy myself.
Oh my.
The coffee's wearing off.
You been to PBR yet?
Do we have everything, are we done with the recording, Andrea? We clicked recording.
Yeah.